Run It Studios is the home of the Run Radio podcast and runradio.net, a podcast and station about the relentless, resilient, and innovative types, inspiring strides in life, business, and beyond. Welcome back to the Run Radio podcast. My name is Trina Wilcox, and in the spirit of tenacity and resilience, something you might not consider is procrastination, but Patrick Sanaghan is here to tell us a little bit more about it and the book he wrote on procrastination. Welcome.
Welcome. Good morning, Trina. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So when I think procrastination, a lot of times the first thought is absolutely not. It's terrible. I don't want anything to do with it. But I feel like there's still a part of me, even though I'm not much of an overall procrastinator. I probably have certain aspects in my life where I hit it and don't even realize. So what's your experience with the topic?
I think there's two things. Just about everyone procrastinates about something, right? But about 20 to 25% of the adult population in this country are what they call chronic procrastinators. It's a lifestyle. They delay just about everything. But sometimes, like for me, doing my income taxes, I try to put that off, and most people do until the very end. But chronic procrastinators really have a lifestyle that hurts them health-wise, not going to the doctor, not going to the dentist, financially, income tax returns are too late and they get penalties, or credit card things and they get penalties. So it's they pay a price for their habit, and that's what it is. Procrastination is a habit.
What made you want to dive into procrastination a little bit more, so much that you wrote a book on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the premise of the book is I'm a very productive procrastinator,
Oh, okay.
and I've always been wrestling with procrastination. But I have a consulting firm. I've written 12 books, 50 published articles. So I'm very productive. But there's some things I procrastinate about. And many years ago, I was writing my dissertation in graduate school, and what I was doing was I was reading my dissertation. I was doing more and more and more research, which is a very sophisticated form of procrastination. And then my board chair said, "You've got to write 3 chapters this semester, or you're out of here." Now that's after 7 years of hard work, tests, exams, money, courses. So I kind of panicked. I went and saw a therapist. Said, "What do you think? What do you think? Help me." And that's 30 years ago. So I don't think people knew too much about procrastination. And she said, "Well, you're not afraid of failure. That's one of the themes, or you're not afraid of success. I think you have to learn how to manage your procrastination." And so what I did is I asked 3 colleagues who had finished their dissertation, "Well, how the heck did you do it?" And they
Mm-hmm.
all had these little strategies that I never thought about. And there's 3 of them that, I can share right now that might help
Yeah,
your listeners.
sure.
Well, one of them was is to make your progress visible somehow. And it's kind of keeping your own personal scorecard. So in my personal life, I don't know if you can see this, I have a yellow sheet of paper every day. It's my agenda, and I have 6 items on my agenda. And when I finish an item, like when I finish this podcast, I will cross it off with a big black marker. And it feels wonderful because you feel like you're making progress. You can see it. So making your progress visible is a very important thing to do any way you can. The second thing I learned was chewable chunks. That I was sitting there and trying to write for 4 and 5 hours at a time. And to a person, they said, "Don't be silly. You take 30 minutes, you take a break. Take 30 minutes, take a break. It'll add up over time." Now, those days, we didn't have a lot of social media. So when you do take a break, try to stay away from social media. Take a walk, do some gardening, do something, read a mystery novel, as a mental break, because social media can just suck your attention. But the notion of you didn't have to sit there and punch it out. So if you
Mm-hmm.
have a garage to clean up, you don't have to do the whole darn thing. I'm going to spend a half an hour cleaning up one section of the garage. You do that for 5 or 6 Saturdays, and you'll probably have a pretty good garage. So chewable chunks is important. And the third one is the one, Trina, that I resisted. They said, "Oh, you have to have a reward map." And I said, "Well, what's that?" They said, "Every time you finish a chapter," and most dissertations are 6 and 7 chapters, you have to have a big reward, that says, "Hey, I did it. I'm rewarding myself. It's wonderful." And you can anticipate rewards, and it's very motivating. And I said, "Well, shouldn't I be more disciplined than that, or more adult than that? Do I really need rewards?" And to a person, they said, "Absolutely. Don't be stupid. Rewards work." And one of
Hmm.
my buddies who had finished was a golfer, and what he promised himself after every chapter, which is a big accomplishment. I mean, writing a dissertation is not fun. he would fly someplace or drive someplace that was very nice, like Hilton Head. He was a golfer. Go down to Florida. He flew to Palm Springs in California, and would spend 3 days golfing. And he just loved it. He acknowledged he was successful finishing a chapter. It's something that motivated him because he was anticipating it, and he treated himself really well. And he finishes his dissertation in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
So rewards really do work. Any way you can reward yourself. That could be a walk with a friend. That could be a latte. In the evening, it could be a glass of wine after you finish something. But listening to your favorite music. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can reward yourself with. But those three things, chewable chunks, make your progress visible, and rewards really work. Those three can help you manage your procrastination pretty well.
Well, like you said, for a long time, we didn't know much about procrastination. There is more information out there about how it can be an asset and all this kind of stuff. So, with the progression of more information, what are some fallacies and some truths that are out there that are kind of common, misconceptions about procrastination overall?
It's a great question. One of them is one of the big myths is that procrastination, they're lazy people. It's
Yeah.
just not true. Lazy people have no anxiety and stress about being lazy. I got one of my best friends, Michael, is a very talented guy. If he doesn't do it today, Pat, there's always next week. He doesn't worry about things, and he's just lazy. And he could be much more successful, but he chooses to have a certain lifestyle, and he does it when he does it. Procrastinators feel guilt, they feel shame, they feel anxiety. And the problem with procrastination, it's like a shadow over your shoulder. You're doing something that may be fun with your kids, or you're having a birthday party, or having a meal with friends. In the back of your mind, you say, uh-oh, that proposal has to get done. That proposal has to get done. So one of the myths is that they're lazy. It's not true. Most procrastinators are pretty productive people. The second myth is this notion around motivation. And there's a guy named Baumeister who wrote a book called Motivation. He's one of the giants in the field. And he said, people think that we have tons and tons of motivation. He said, we don't. We have small amounts of motivation. And the analogy he says, it's a little like a little battery that runs out of energy very quickly. So you have to use your motivation in strategic ways. And for most procrastinators, starting is the hardest part. They
Mm.
look at a task and go, oh, I don't think I can do this. I'm feeling stress. I feel anxiety. They walk away. And that's what keeps the hook in the habit. Walking
Hmm.
away, you just feel relief right away. And he's saying you have to use the motivation at the beginning of the task. We know that if you start something, a chewable chunk, you start something that you, about 50% of the time to 60% of the time, you'll continue it. So just starting is the hugest part, right? And the third one is kind of a counterintuitive one. Mark Twain, very famous writer and a very famous guy, a lot smarter than me. He said, if you have two frogs to eat the big one first. And that will never, never work for a procrastinator because they'll get overwhelmed with it. They won't know how to do it. But they might have a chance to eat the small frog or the small task first by chewable chunks. Make it a social activity. You don't want to exercise, you exercise with a friend. You play music while you're doing your laundry, which is, a mind-numbing task. But you listen to music or you're watching a TV show. But get the small task done. Now you've got some confidence that you've accomplished something and you have some strategies you can apply to the bigger task. So I think it's a little bit of a misdirection for procrastinators to think they're going to tackle the big one first. They'll tackle the smaller one possibly, and they have some success and some strategies. And I think that myth has been not very good for procrastinators. Has that been helpful?
Yeah. So when you decided to write a book on this, did you have all of those tools before you wrote the book, or did you use those as you went along?
Yeah, what happened
Learning.
was COVID hit. I was on the road about 160 days a year in my consulting firm, and COVID hit, and all of a sudden, boom, everything slowed down to say the very least. And we did a lot of Zoom meetings and things like that. But I had more time in my hands than I ever had as an adult. And I looked around my office, and I had 4 or 5 boxes of journal articles and papers and some videos about procrastination. I said, I know a lot about this because I've been wrestling with it the whole time. I think of writing a book about procrastination and strategies to manage it. That's why, not to cure it. I'm not a psychiatrist. I have a doctorate in organizational development. And the psychiatrists would look at it very differently. They would say low impulse control. They have all these kind of labels for it. I said, I think I have some strategies that really work. And I tend to be a researcher. So the book is full of good research and practical suggestions that actually work in the field for people. And I'm very proud of it. I've written 12 books. Some of them have been in higher education. very small audience to say the least. And I think this is the one that can actually help people a lot because procrastinators just suffer a lot.
What did you learn most from the process writing the book?
I think the notion of uh, the chewable chunks is very important. That if you just start something and don't overwhelm yourself with a large task, little progress adds up over time to big progress. I'll tell you a real quick story. So there's a very famous guy who was a ghostwriter, and they said, and he wrote 60 books. And so someone was interviewing him, and he says, "How the heck did you write 60 books in your career?" And he says, "Oh, I do two crappy pages a day." The guy said, "What?" He says, "Two crappy pages a day." He says, "At the end of the year, I've got 600 pages. I give that to an editor. They clean it up, then knock it down to about 250 pages, and that's how I produce those books." So it's this notion of 2 pages a day for a writer is a lot. I mean, I've written
Hmm.
a lot in my career, and if I can get 2 pages done, or fix two windows out of 15, right?
Yeah.
Or paint one wall in the house, it's this notion of small can add up over time. I think is a very important notion.
So I'm expecting you used that during your writing process, the small chunks a little bit at a time. Was there any point throughout that you got panicked and thought, no, this isn't working?
Oh, absolutely. And
Okay.
this is where you mentioned something very early. The procrastination can have some positive things. If you don't know how to do something, you're going to put it off until you learn how to do it. You might ask
Mhm.
somebody else. You might do some research. You might ask an expert. So procrastination is not always bad. But what I always have is about two or three writing projects
Okay.
because the way my mind works, I can pay attention for a little while, but then you say, I've been 3 days now doing this thing here. Let me do something different. So I always have two or three projects that move in different kinds of, paces, and it keeps me engaged and energized and motivated so I can turn to something else and move something forward. Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk
Different.
about a writing. You said you've done a lot of writing. Let's talk about that for a second. Have you went the traditional route every time? Did you do self-publishing, hybrid? What did you do when it came time to get it out there for people to read?
Yeah, I've been published by legitimate publishing houses. McGraw-Hill's published my work. The American Council of Education has published my work. HRD Press has published my work. But in the last 3 or 4 years since COVID, I've done some self-publishing, and you get it done a lot quicker. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of times in my field, you can finish the book, and it takes a year and a half to get it out there in the public. So the self-publishing thing, you can turn around a lot quicker. But one of the things I have found is the writing part, and kind of putting it together, and you can hire different consultants to format it and give you a cover. All that stuff is there's a lot of moving pieces, but I don't do it myself. I figure I'm there to write. We pay
Right.
someone to edit it. We pay somebody else to do a cover. I don't have any artistic ability. So just making sure you can delegate to others. You don't have to do everything yourself, I think is a really important notion. But the marketing is the thing we have to figure out.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons we do the podcast because we want
Right.
people to know that the book is out there and hopefully, I mean, I make $3 a book, so I'm not going to make my first million on the book, but
For sure.
I have a combination of both self-publishing and being traditionally published.
Do you have a preference?
Um, well, the one thing about when you go to a traditional publisher, they take care of all the headaches.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're doing the editing and the copywriting, and they're figuring this out in the ISBN numbers. So you don't have all those little tasks you have to do. The self-publishing, there's a lot more ownership. You have to take care of a lot of details. And I have a project manager who's a colleague of mine, excuse me, who who's an operational person. She just likes to get things done. So I can say, okay, let's get these five people together and kind of organize it. And I pay attention to it at a high level, but I figured my task is to write, hers is to put all the pieces together. And there's a lot of pieces, but once again, the marketing piece is still a mystery to us. So
Yeah.
we sell several hundred books a year, and we'd like to sell a little bit more if we can.
So for someone out there that does have, maybe they've already started writing their book, but they are reluctant to even figure out how to self-publish, what would you recommend to them so they can get their story told?
Absolutely, get help. Get help. And there's a lot of self-publishing firms out there for around for a long time. I have mixed feelings about some of them. I went through one of them. Archway Publishing is one. So there's a number of people, but they're there to kind of take the burden off your shoulders, but charge you a lot of money. And
Yeah.
so if you think you're going to do everything by yourself and it's not going to cost you anything, I think you're fooling yourself. But get help, and it's good to have what we call a posse. Someone who's a cheerleader. How's it going today? Did you get your pages done? That kind of stuff there. Writing groups are really helpful because a lot of times you show up once a month. I did that for my first book, and you show up. There were six people. Two of them were pretty well known in the Northeast, is where I live. And no one showed up saying, "Oh, I was really busy this month, so I didn't do any writing." It was like, no, 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 we're going there with half a day, serious stuff, and that group kind of motivation, support, and accountability really kind of moved me forward. I thought that might be something that people try. There's a lot of different tasks. There's a lot of courses out there. Many of them are free to self-publish, but just be careful you don't spend a whole lot of money paying someone to do a lot of the tasks that you can do, or your friends can do, or your colleagues can do.
Yeah.
It's not an easy. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I had spoke with another writer that said the group was a game changer for him. He
Yep.
ended up getting beta readers from that group, and it just made the whole process so much more palatable.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. You share the burden. I mean,
Yeah,
and when you're working with people who have the same challenge or opportunity or problem, it can be a very, very powerful notion and a very supportive notion. But getting help, asking for advice, procrastinators are not good at asking for advice.
yeah.
And the other thing that there's a guy named Daniel Kahneman who out of Princeton, he just passed away at the age of 92. He won the Nobel Prize for economics about 20 years ago and wrote 15 books. I mean, just a brilliant, brilliant guy. But he said something that I have the quote in my in my office here. He says, when you take a serious project on, not like taking out the garbage, right? I mean, like a serious project, getting an MBA, going to school, writing a book, painting a house. I mean, uh, it will always take longer, and we're really bad at deadlines. I mean, we're horrible at deadlines. I mean, a lot of research that shows that we can be off by 40 and 50%. So, a piece of advice for your listeners, if they say I can do it in a week, I'd say do it in a week and a half or 2 weeks. Because then if you get caught at the end of the week and you're only halfway through, you can lose your motivation and inspiration. And the second thing he said was it'll always be harder.
Mm,
And that's so important to know that to do good things, to do important things is going to be hard. So
right.
that's why getting friends to help you out, making the social activity, chewable chunks, all those little strategies can help you because it is harder probably and it'll take you longer. I'll give you a
Well,
quick example. I went to paint a house about 10 years ago, and I never painted a house before. And I said, how hard can it be to paint a house? I said, it'll take me a long weekend. It took me 4 weeks because I never knew how to paint a house and realize you're on the ladder. You don't think you're going to be doing 50 feet of painting, man. You're scared and shaky, and I'll never do it again. I mean, I'll pay a painter to paint my house, but I
right.
didn't know how to do it. And I didn't ask for advice. I figured, how hard can this be? I borrowed a ladder from a friend, a neighbor, and spent 4 long weeks painting a relatively medium-sized house. So it was a lesson learned. So asking for advice, getting a reality check from somebody else who's done it. And most people are very good at giving advice because they want you to avoid the pain that they felt.
Yeah. When it comes to procrastination, a lot of times we're talking about how to be better at not doing it and the tools and tips for doing it. Are there any advantages to taking on a little procrastination once in a while?
Yeah, just to have a mental break. We don't need to be driving and driving and driving and being busy. Kierkegaard, the philosopher, said, busyness is a decision.
Hmm.
And I think that's a powerful notion. I think somehow we've gotten this notion we got to do, 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 do. And sometimes you just got to take a half a day off or take a walk or go with a friend or see a movie, do something nice for yourself and not be driven all the time.
Yeah.
And and the other thing too, it's really important that self-criticism does not help. The
Mm.
research is very strong. So when people say, "Oh, I should have, I could have, I'm not smart enough, I'm lazy," when you beat yourself up, procrastination habit kicks in big time. So self-compassion, just saying, "Hey, Pat, you blew today. Tomorrow's a new day. We'll start." And after this thing, I have 4 things I have to do because I'm leaving for Iceland tomorrow. So I have those 4 things to do. I want to get them done so that I can go in a plane and feel relaxed and enjoy myself. So it's just you don't have to work, 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 and be busy, 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 busy.
I like to say when people ask how you're doing or what's going on. I like to say I've been productive and not busy
Yes.
because I feel like if you're busy, it's not anything's getting done. You're just in motion and stressed a
Yeah,
lot of
I
time.
like that. I like that terminology a lot. Being busy, a lot of time we don't look at the outcome. Being
Right.
productive, we know we have accomplished something. And I talked to another podcaster maybe a year ago, and he had done 500 of these podcasts with different people. I said, "How long did that take you?" He said, 14 years.
Yeah.
Now he's got a library of
Yeah.
knowledge that is valuable. I mean, like once a month. He had two kids. I mean, he couldn't do it every day. But the long view is also very helpful for procrastinators. Over time, you can accomplish great things.
What are your thoughts on the whole hustle culture?
I don't like it too much. And we we reward people who are busy. I do a lot of organizational consulting at the very senior levels. And when I see people walking into meetings, like they're 3 minutes late and they're breathless, like, oh my God, I'm glad I say to usually the boss, watch carefully what they do because it's very dramatic. It slows everyone else down because someone on the senior team is late consistently. That's a pattern, that's a habit. And they usually get acknowledged for it. Oh, there's Pat, he's late again, ha ha ha. While the three of us have been already sitting there for 10 minutes waiting for Pat. So the hustle culture, if I'm understanding your point, is a, a real quick thing. I deal with some young entrepreneurs just because I wanted to learn what their mindset is. And they are working so hard. And the hardest thing that they have to learn to do is to delegate to others.
Ah,
You can't do it all. You can't make all the decisions. You can't build the thing. And if the ones that can learn to delegate tend to be much more successful than
uh-huh.
the ones that don't. But they put in 10 and 12 and 14 hours a day over many months, if not years, to build, to do this thing that they have some passion for. And I think if they could manage their aspirations, their deadlines a little bit more, they'd have a better quality of life. Because a lot of them are dragged out. I mean, when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh my God, help me."
Yeah. And what I've been seeing, I love being a driven person. I like to see results, but I'm so aggravated and frustrated with people rewarding burnout.
Yeah,
The hustle culture. Do. You're so tired. Oh, look what they've done. Well, they're exhausted,
they're
and
exhausted.
we're telling them, "Yay, great!" And other people are thinking, "Oh, I've got to do that."
That's a great point. We call that the buckets of sweat syndrome. That, oh my
Yeah.
God, Pat, he just worked so hard, so hard, so hard. And then you say, well, what did Pat do this week? He went to a lot of meetings. He's rushing around. He's doing things, as opposed to no, he finished the report and it's on the president's desk. I mean,
Right.
look at the outcome. We use that word productivity versus busy. Powerful notion. To be productive is not easy. To be busy, I think, is easy.
I agree so much. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Tell people where they can go to get your book.
Yeah, the book is called How to Be a Better Procrastinator, and it's on Amazon Books. I mean, it's right there. There's a Kindle version that's like $5, and then there's a paperback that I think is 11.99 or something like that. But it's Amazon Books, How to Be a Better Procrastinator.
And you're looking for Patrick Sanaghan, but there is a G in there. So if
Right.
that's what that's the
Right.
one.
That's the one.
All right. Thank you so much. Come back when you have more to share. I'd love to talk to you again.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Trina. Have a good day.
Thank you. Be sure you follow along on all platforms by linking over from runradio.net.